let's see if that's picking up. Okay, so that may be getting audio now. We'll see. All right. Okay, Ash, how about now? Let me know if I have solved my audio issues there and if that is coming through and how that is. Sorry, guys. All right, so hopefully the audio is coming through now. I literally made no changes to my audio setup since last week, so I'm not entirely certain why it has suddenly decided to not play nice, but hopefully audio is working okay now. All right, there we go. Okay, so we're up and running. Good. Good. Yeah, literally no changes made between last week and this week, but audio decided to stop functioning. So anyway, give me a second and we'll get moving along here then. Let's talk about... So anyway, today, for our main material, I want to talk about, if you've seen the videos that I had going up this week, I want to talk specifically about the place, as per George Silver. I mean, it's one of those concepts that's kind of universal, even if we don't want to get into the rest of the true time stuff. And so specifically, looking at how Meyer uses provoking and taking to get us to the place that we can then attack from. So for this, it's really a discussion of measure more than anything else, and either entering into measure under guard, with some kind of provoking attack, or having the measure forced upon us when a person chooses to attack us or otherwise move into our range. So I'm going to pull Jacob in for this because this kind of thing works a lot better with a second living human to work with rather than just a piece of wood holding a sword, and we'll go from there. So, Jacob, come on in, and I'll let you know. You can see if you're in frame. Right there, perfect. There we go. There we go. All right. We might have interruptions today, guys, also, since we've got my daughter running around on this lovely Sunday morning. So, let's first start talking about measure, and specifically kind of the different distances that can be involved once we've entered into the Zufecten, and we're going to move into range to attack. There's ultimately 3 distances that we're concerned about. And they kind of correlate to the weak of the sword, the strong of the sword, and then the body to a certain extent. So the first distance that we're concerned about is one where I'm 2 steps, complete steps, from reaching my opponent, right? So if Jacob and I are fully 2 steps apart, right? I can't reach on the first step, only on the second step can I manage to reach him. From this distance, this is an okay place potentially to begin from. I can safely cut into range, and Jacob's second, if he decides to attack into that, right, if I do nothing, yeah, he can hit me, but he has to take a complete step to get that threat to my face, right? So from this distance, I can provoke by moving to a single step distance. Maybe I'm cutting into range to strike. Maybe I'm simply moving in under a counter guard. If he's hanging out in, kind of ox on his shoulder, or Vomtog, excuse me, whatever, anywhere up on that side, maybe I want to move in and just kind of provoke him to respond and see if he'll attack in or do something from there. But this 2-step distance, really Meyer says about the weak, right, that we can control him in the weak, and to a certain extent we can, because we can get him to do the things that we want, and we can do it relatively safely. The next distance, though, we have to be a little bit more careful about, and that's going to be the distance where we're a step and a half away, right? I still can't easily reach Jacob with a single step, but my step brings me into his range where he may not need a step. This is that middle distance, and for this, Meyer, in his Rostock rules, tells us, right, between the weak and the strong, we need to really parry well. And it's true, because if at this distance, if I try and lay on with an attack, let's say that I decide that I'm going to strike wide around with like a Zornhau to attack him, and I come around to get him, he's got an easy parry and a quick riposte. It becomes a very, very dangerous distance at that step and a half, because his action to respond to me is even shorter, to the point where he doesn't even have to necessarily worry about parrying. He can simply decide to step offline and counterattack and reach me directly. Right? As I strike ground, great, that's going to hit, and I didn't miss him. The third distance then is that single step, right, where we're not even really a step away at this point. We're in range to reach. And that's the place that we're ultimately trying to get to. We're trying to get within that single distance, that strong measure, where now we can actually attack with or without a step, as needed. A step back, a step to the side, or just a turn of the hips. Okay? Yes, hi. Gotta love live TV. I know. Are you going to show off your sword? One of the ways that you can sneak into measure is just be incredibly cute and then like move in on a person while they're otherwise distracted. Right? As like a 2-year-old, you can get away with it with a lot of people. And it's a lot of fun. Yeah, hi, Bubba. She's having a good time. So, completely now lost my train of thought.
Within one step.
Thank you. Yeah. So getting into that one-step difference, right? Distance, right? Like various ways that we're going to get there. We can provoke, we can constrain, and kind of work in a couple of those different ways. So the first one, right? Provocations to get into distance. One can be to provoke by just stepping into distance under guard, right? If I decided to move over and provide an invitation to Jacob, right? He wants to attack to my left side. That's what he's showing at the moment. So I may want to gather and move into range, and he's thinking, oh yeah, there it is, right? So I can gain my cross with a nice abscession, wind up, and then reach. If I'm going to move in at this distance, I really want my point to be forward. I need a shorter path from my sword between the two of us than his sword has to me. So if I try and do that same thing, but I step in with my point back, right? So I step in with my point back. I step in and I come to here. Now I have to travel this full distance to get up there and parry. Even if I manage to get the parry, I don't have a nice strong crossing to work from. Jacob's going to have a much better inside line to be able to force me off to the side, step around, whatever it is that he wants to do. You want to help out also? Excuse me a second, guys. Okay. Oh, riding it like a horse? Okay. I'll use this one.
Upstage, her footwork is all over the place.
Well, look, she's a beginner. She's just learning to walk. I think she's doing quite well. I mean, she's been walking for a year, but still. All right. So anyway, guys. Sorry about that. If I'm going to move in and provoke with the body, I need that point forward. If I move in and back, I got to travel too far. I'm not going to win a strong crossing. So, yeah, I might step in, for instance, here, right? And that's fine. If I come in under ox, let's try that one more time. Right? To move in under ox, there we go. Thrust into the face, gain it, go from there. Because my sword has to move a shorter distance. Because the point being forward means that the sword is going to be forward. So, that's one. Another way that I can have that distance closed between the two of us with a provocation is to invite an attack. And this gets into that second range, right? I don't want to attack from that 1.5 step distance because it's bad for me. But I do want my opponent to attack from that 1.5 step distance. So if I can get into that range where Jacob can't quite reach me, right? We're in a single step, and I can draw that attack in, then okay, cool. So from here, right, if I move in and say, and he might decide to attack, right, then we get our suppressing cut down through and stab him in the floating rib, short ribs on him, okay? So if you're going to provoke with the body to draw an attack, don't step fully into distance with the point off line. You're going to get hit or have a bad crossing parry at worst. But if we can provoke with the body just out of range, we can either respond with Nachreisen, we can respond by giving ourselves a nice strong parry position, or go from there. Excuse me a second, I see a comment. About my daughter. Yes, she's gotten quite big. They grow up so fast. So we're going to work from that. So those are two possibilities, right, of provoking with the body. The other option then is to provoke with the sword, right? And so if I provoke with the sword, that basically means that I'm going to launch an attack that I potentially want to see parried. Now, again, the distances involved are important. I don't want to be so close that as I go and make that attack, he can just counterattack straight in. And I don't want to be so far away that he doesn't care. So trying to figure out that distance where we can make it look like I can make it. So especially if I hang out in that 1.5 range and I show, oh man, here comes a great big strike. Oh, cool, he responded, right? Brought my footwork back, shortened my distance. Now work to the opening. And again, Meyer talks about that, right? He'll say that, oh, you're going to act like you're going to take this great big step and then shorten it. Play around with that, work in that range and in that distance. In the future, we'll also talk about how we can use the Meisterhau in this exact same kind of scenario to provoke a response out of our opponent and really give us a strong kind of potential response. So, for instance, just as a quick aside for it, Jacob's hanging out there, on his right shoulder, if he's an ox, whatever, and I'm not going to get into this right now, but I'm going to throw a crump out, okay, to provoke against this. And so I'm going to come in and say, oh, I want a crump, right? Oh, awesome, right? Turn into it, get my binding, work to the center. It will vary up how we want to provoke that action to occur, what our advantage is. In this case, the crump being really, really nice because it's going to take me offline, create a bigger distance that he has to attack through, right? I'm actually increasing the distance. If I just step in to attack directly, he's got a nice short line, but by stepping off line, targeting over his shoulder, we get a little bit stronger, and then my wind back to the long point threatens his face. A lot better. And if he attacks straight in my moment, I can turn it into a parry at the same time. All right, Jacob, any thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, criticisms, witty remarks?
Nope.
Thank you, Jacob. What about you guys that are watching? Any questions about that? Any comments, questions, etc.? Otherwise, we'll move on and we'll start into the follow-along, little simpler lesson of the day and go from there. We'll give that just a second, and then if there are no questions, we'll jump along. All right. Well, I don't see any questions popping up, so let's move on to our warm-up for the day. So for today, we have a nice kind of simple warm-up that we're going to do using one of our cards, as you can see there on the screen now, but I can't. There we go. It's going to start off with a Mittelhau across the top, then a Mittelhau down low, followed by an Unterhau, then a Zornhau. So just kind of a nice, simple, easy process for this one. you know, as always, we'll warm up with it, but then we can also start to think about how we might use it as a particular scenario for what is occurring for us. So Jacob and I will kind of work through it, and then we'll kind of game plan it and see what's actually going on with it. So we first get our Mittelhau across, then our Mittelhau back down low, Unterhau from below, and Zorn from above. So middle, middle, Unter, Zorn. Middle, middle, Unter, Zorn. Middle, middle, Unter, Zorn. So let's think about that then as, you know, a potential situation for any warm-up, right? If our first actions are always going to be a provoker or a taker, and what we've just talked about from distance, I could quite easily consider this as a provocation. Let's say I start those 2 steps out, my face right under the card at the moment, right? And I attack in with a Mittelhau and I say, hi, into Ox, bam. Now, Jacob's not going to want to attack straight into the guard that I've just closed, so perhaps he decides to throw an Unterhau at my right hip afterwards, right? Kind of move in, right, bam. All right, so we strike that through. Beautiful. And then there's my Unter, and then the Zornhau on the way out. Right, and so we can kind of look around at that as a potential lead-in from either side, right? If Jacob's set up and he wants to attack my left ear, maybe I'll provoke, right, and step in, bam, and then come back through. Unterhau, Zorn on the way out. Right? So pretty much all of these, we can always kind of find the distance. We can find a use with them for our warm-ups and how we want to make them work. Excuse me, guys. Adjust the angle a little bit so we get, there we go. Hopefully a little less lens flare happening for you. There we go. Got to chase the sun. Okay? So with that warm-up, guys, go ahead and let's run through it a little bit. Jacob and I will take turns on that, and we'll do this for just a minute or two, get you warm, and then we're going to move on for the day, right? So, right, if you cut, bam, there we go, we can parry. We can strike around, bam, parry, Unterhau, through, Zornhau on the way out. Trim my trees in the process. Mm-hmm. You want to take one? Sure. Okay. Right? Mm-hmm. There you go. Unterhau, through the chin. Ah, yeah, right there. Right? Don't assume it has to be into that lower opening. Yeah. It can sometimes come through an upper opening as well, just into the chin with that Unterhau. So, try that one again. Okay.
So like I'm in.
Yeah. Back up. Exactly. Good. Let's look at it again. Do it from on this side, right? So come in, do this, through, and strike out. Okay. Kind of working through those, feel it out. Follow that pattern, guys. Get yourself nice and warm, and we'll move on. All right. And Britta, in answer to your question of how my daughter got so cute, genetics. All right. Let's move on then to our technical drill for the day. All right, guys, so hopefully you're all nice and warm. So let's talk then about our specific drill today that we're going to work on. We've so far, over the last few weeks, gone over 3 of the primary cuts, the principal cuts, the chief cuts, as Meyer calls them, in the system. So the last one we need to cover is the Mittelhau, which is part of the reason that we did it as our warm-up today, so that we can kind of talk about it and get to it. So the using the Mittelhau as a cut in the vor can be, kind of dangerous, especially if we're using it to cut straight in. The hands tend to be exposed quite a bit through a fair amount of the cut, and so it's not great for that. Now, using it, though, as a provoker or a taker can be a much better choice. And again, if we go with the idea that we shouldn't be, necessarily launching any of our cuts directly to the body in kind of a first intention, committed attack, then maybe that doesn't matter as much. But if, on the other hand, we also say, even though it's a provoker, if the person doesn't do anything, we should set ourselves up in a position to hit them. Okay, so we'll play around with that. So, yes, that's Daddy on the screen there. So let's look at then the middle how through its kind of motions. Like all our other cuts, it's going to follow kind of certain paths. First thing that it's going to tend to do is it's going to start off in the middle hoot, right? Now, a lot of times we'll pull this in really tight. There actually is an argument for why we should be holding it out here a little bit more to the side that we're working on in kind of relation to Meyer's diagrams and some stuff with actually Fibonacci sequence spirals that we'll get into. Yeah, fun, math, woo! But we're going to start off there. And our first action is going to be, as always, to get the sword moving. So we're going to kind of get that initial tightening of the hands to get it moving, leading to the turning of the hip, the casting out of the sword, then stepping through and to the side. The Milhau has a special concern to it that we don't necessarily find in the other cuts. And that is the question of, when should I allow the sword to start to rotate, to flip around to the other side? Because it's going to naturally want to do that. And so what we want to watch out for is getting to the long point and starting to turn our sword at that point. You're going to find, if you do that, especially if you do it during test cutting, that you're going to hit the target and you're immediately going to start to rotate in and you're going to club it, give it a light superficial cut. So we want to make sure when we're doing this that we're cutting all the way through with it before we allow it to turn and break to the other side. Okay? Make sure that it's getting all the way through there before you allow it to turn, before you allow it to break. So we're going to work on this first as a bit of a drill. Jacob and I are going to kind of go through and do it. And I'm going to show you the method that we typically use in Sacramento for drilling something like this. The first step being what we've just done, of defining the motions of the cut, the shape of the cut, if you will. So Jacob will do a few of them to get himself set. And then we'll go. So the first thing we want to do after we've worked on the basic motion, right, and the basic mechanics of it, is we're going to apply a target for the person to attack against. Let me make sure we're on screen properly for this. All right. So we're gonna start here in kind of our position. So I want to apply a target that Jacob is going to do. The second that we have that target appear, things become slightly more difficult, right? We've gone from just moving the sword through the air to actually having a particular goal in mind. All right, good. So we've got our mechanic, then we have a context. Then we want to add another mechanic. That mechanic is often going to be something like a impediment, something that's going to prevent the person from being able to do the action until it is removed. So in this situation, I might have the target out there, but with a sword blocking, okay? And as soon as the sword goes away, Jacob is going to attack. It's all right, my tree needs some trimming anyway. Okay? So we kind of get into that response of when is it safe to attack, right? And we want to watch out. Like, he doesn't want to attack in if the sword moves, but is still in a position to actually defend. Good. So we have that. So then we want to move into a drill properly. Because up to this point, we're just kind of going through the motion. So we need to turn it into a drill. We have to add more context to it. At this point, usually we'll especially have a tendency to pair up masks on and start to use ourselves as the context for it. For today's lesson, though, because I know most of you guys are going to be working by yourself from home, maybe just with a Pell at best, and have to think about it, we won't do that. But instead, we'll add the first layer of drill by changing things up slightly, and now making it such that what I want Jacob to do, pardon me a moment, hi, yes, this is why you never work with children in any kind of video setting, because you lose your train of thought with your child. So, what we're going to do for this drill, to make it into one for now, is Jacob's going to do this as a series of cuts. So what I actually want him to do is launch any other cut first to hit the target, and then be ready for a strike that's going to follow along that same line that he just cut. Okay, so he might cut through and then cut it across to break it out. Through the chin. So one of the things, like on that one, Jacob actually missed the parry, and if I was coming in, we would have had an interesting situation. Anytime you're going to parry, guys, Meyer's explicit about this, and especially with cutting across, like we're doing at the moment, through the chin, right? His initial attack can come in on any of the various lines. It doesn't matter. But if he's going to defend against an attack that I'm throwing, he wants to make sure that his cut comes through at the height of my chin, right? Because that'll actually parry and give him kind of an advantageous crossing to be able to come back in. And again, it doesn't matter where I attack from. If I attack from high, height of the chin. If I attack low, height of the chin. Okay? Through that chin-shoulder kind of window is where we want to find ourselves at this point. So, I'm going to turn on my timer. And Jacob and I are going to go through and just do a couple of 1-minute sets. So we have a 1-minute set, a 30-second rest, and then we'll move on after 3 sets of that. So give us just a second. Camera back a little bit too. Yeah. Gives us a little more space to work with. There we go. Give us a little more space to work with as well. So, all right. Attacks. Horizontal. 30 seconds. Horizontal. Horizontal. There we go. That's all right. We missed. There we go, rest for 30 seconds. Okay. So, working through on that, doing the actions as we go along. We'll now change this up and make this into the next level drill. The way that we're going to do that, to make it slightly more difficult, we'll try and do this in 10 seconds, is we're going to add a Zufechten stage to this. So we're going to back out of range a little bit more, and Jacob is going to have to close in and provoke a response from me, and then follow through and get his strike. All right, so you'll move in, You'll get me to attack. You'll take it, and then you'll attack to the mask.
So any kind of provoking action.
Any kind of provoking action, right? So he'll come in,
Right.
yeah, but you want to be able to take it with your middle half.
Okay. So I can come in the guard, provoke the action.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. I have to chase. All right, 30 seconds, auto rest again. Okay. So the way that we make the drill more difficult right off the bat, right, is by having to add additional elements to it to get started. The first thing we always add is a Zufectin coming into range. The next thing we're going to add is an Abzu, a levy. So after Jacob lands the strike on the mask, he's going to need to escape because I'm going to throw an afterblow. So same thing. All right, so he moves in to provoke. Hold, baby. Hi, Bubba. It's like having a card. Game off. We'll redo this set. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why I pre-film the sections as a general rule.
Just edit all the cuteness out of it.
Yeah, seriously, this happens most of the time when I'm trying to film stuff. Is I'll get through a take and this will happen. So we'll reset on this next one, guys. 30 seconds, and then we'll do that one again. So Jacob's going to move in to provoke. I will attack. He will follow up with his counter strike to the mask. Then I will throw an after blow that he needs to escape from. She's got 10 seconds before we're going to go again. That beep at me. Oh, sorry. That was still the last 30 seconds
Yes,
of the last
last
time.
30 seconds.
That's all right.
Get it all out.
Yep, run around, Bubba. Run around. We'll check for questions while. Yeah. All right, 10 seconds. Yeah, there's Daddy. Let's see if we can get a couple of sets. Just watch out for the baby. Yeah. Lots of high strikes.
Sure.
All right, so you move into attack, right? Boom. Draw the attack. Boom. Get the counter. After blow. We've just jumped to like a level 5 drill by having.
We have to protect the children in the middle
Yeah.
of the fight.
Yeah, exactly, right? Oh, here comes the attack. He parries. Get the counter. There we go.
I know, it's scary.
Throw my attack. Boom. He comes. There we go. Hard to do one of these without potentially finding the child. All right. No? No good? Stay over. Stay
All
on my
sword
side?
fighting must cease immediately.
All right. We've been told. All right. We ready to fight?
Yeah, go.
You gonna haka?
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
See that head nod?
All right, we'll hold there. So, sorry guys, working with children, right? Live videos. Hi, yeah, good job. At the end there, though, I changed things up on Jacob. I threw the mask out for him to attack, and he had to make a choice. So that actually leads into the next wave that we want to add. I'm going to pause this since we have a child running around underfoot. The first level of the drill, right, is just practicing it in block repetition in range. Second level, add a Zufectin. Make it so that the person has to think about how they're going to enter. Third level, add an Abzu. How are they going to get away? Fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh level. That's going to come by either increasing the depth of the drill by adding additional steps on, right? So maybe after the initial strike with the parry, Jacob then would need to attempt to deliver a riposte that gets set aside, and then he has to strike around, right? Bringing up the difficulty of the entire thing. Or we can increase the breadth of the drill by putting in a choice. In this situation being that on a provocation, Jacob steps in to provoke, and maybe rather than instead of coming with the attack, I just step in, right? Those are two different stimulus. If he's expecting the strike, right, but I instead just step in, there can be that moment of hesitation where he doesn't realize that something different is occurring. So that's why we want to put that choice in there and get used to making a choice between one option or another, so that he has to prepare for it and go from there. And then we can start to string those together for even more difficulty. If I'm adding depth and breadth by both having multiple actions and multiple outcomes, the drill is going to get progressively more difficult. The goal that we want to have is about a 70% success rate before we move on and add additional difficulty. If we're succeeding less than 50% of the time, maybe dial it back to the previous level, take away a step, and let the person focus and work on it there so that they don't, you don't have any problems with this, right? If you're practicing at home, maybe you have a friend or a family member that's willing to work with this for you, so that's kind of your guideline. If you're doing better than 70% of the time, make it more difficult. If you're failing, a little bit less difficult. If you happen to have another person that you can practice with, that not only will they hold a mask for you, but they'll put a mask on and they'll try and hit you back, then there's another element that we want to add into the drill to make it even better, and that's to do it in an exchange format, where maybe initially Jacob and I are going to start off, and on the first exchange, I step into distance to provoke, he launches an attack, then I parry, I come in with my riposte, I then get away under cover, bam. Okay, there's one. Now on the next stage of the drill, the next part of it, now Jacob steps in to range to provoke, which causes me to attack. So he gets his parry, his riposte, and then back. And it's going to flow back and forth between the two of us, where he just stepped in, so now I step in, get my response, and go from there, and do each step along the way. My turn, his turn, my turn, his turn. The reason you want to do that way, if you have a friend to practice with, is so that it's a little bit more real, right? No drilling situation that we ever work is ever going to be 100% real. It's just not possible. But if we do this in such a way where we take those turns, it puts a little bit of realism in. Then, eventually, you've worked through that, you've worked through your drills, you're feeling really good, you're having a high success rate. Then we turn it into a bouting situation, where we're still doing the exact same drill. The same rules apply. One of us can step in, provide an opening, a person will attack with the Zornhau, we set it aside with the Mittelhau, give a riposte, strike around. That's our drill, right? In a bouting situation, either one of us might decide to come in with the initial attack and go from there. And it's totally, a question of either of us initiating the response. Not that we're necessarily taking turns. So maybe Jake goes twice through on the action. Then on the next one, I am. He fell asleep, right? And again, that makes it even that little bit more real. We suddenly have that much more kind of realism, and it gets difficult with each additional thing that we add. And now we're getting really close to almost sparring, right? The only step that's next after that is to start to remove the restrictions on what actions are allowed to go through from there. Anyway, we're coming on about 11:45, guys. How you doing? Any questions, comments, concerns, criticisms? Jacob, any thoughts to add on to it? Otherwise, if there's nothing else, I think that's probably about where we're going to be today for material.
Yeah, I mean, I hardly ever do wheelhouse.
Right.
I'm always afraid of people getting the overbind on me.
Right.
So, I mean, how do you... What is the incorrect situation to throw in?
In the vor, in a distance where I'm going to give you that opening, right? If I'm trying to commit with that, if I'm coming here strong with a commitment, any parry from you is going to win that, right? So I either don't want you to touch my sword, right? So that you'll come in behind it, in which case, okay, cool, I can beat it out to the side. Or you're attacking first, in which case, the middle house.
So it's almost always a knock action then?
if it's used in the vor, it's really used to provoke a response out of you, and it can be like if I'm going to get a parry, right? If I'm going to come in and get a parry, right? I can try and pull back, to avoid the bind. But in that case, I don't want to allow contact to occur, right? I want to make sure that I see that, oh, this guy parries wide, right? So maybe I'll throw, right, kind of situation, depending on how I want to end it. Excellent point raised in one of my comments. Guys, we're doing this without safety gear because we're not actively like practicing right now. We're working on this for the video. Wear a mask, right? Right now, you should just be wearing a mask. You're outside, you're hanging out with other people, put a mask on. Seriously. Either for protecting yourself from the swords or, so that you don't get the Rona. Either way, wear a mask. Wear both types of masks would be better. I'm waiting on my cloth masks to arrive. Next time Jacob's here, hopefully we'll both be properly masked. I know we're demonstrating terrible quarantine at the moment. Luckily, we don't actually see very many other people. What you see, basically, nobody. Yeah, same. So we've increased our footprint by 1. Any other questions, guys, for the day? Anything else that you wanted to comment on? Or
that was the main one.
Okay. Yeah, so that takes us through now our 4 primary cuts for Meyer. Next week, guys, I think we're going to start playing around with some of the Meisterhau, especially if Jacob's going to come over. It's a lot easier to demonstrate the Meisterhau and work with them against another living opponent. Otherwise, we might do some actions from the bind. We'll kind of see what we want to work on from there. But thank you for coming to the stream that we held today. Again, we'll have one every Sunday. Leave a comment in the video. Let us know what you want to see in future videos. Otherwise, if you don't follow us already on Facebook or YouTube, like, subscribe, do all the things. And we'll see you next time, guys. All right. Making sure I don't have any more questions coming through at the end here. I'm going to let it run for just a second. So if you do have a question, go ahead and type it in below. And then, if not, in about 2 minutes, I'm going to end the stream. Yeah. Anyway, all right. So we're just hanging out and talking. Cool. Yeah. What's going on, Kara? Aw. Throw up the Q&A just in case for people watching. All right, so it's question and answer time. What else while we're standing around talking about stuff on a live video? Any other questions not related to this that you want to work on while we wait to see if anybody else has questions? No? Great.
I know. It's a straightforward lesson, Ted. I don't have questions.
No, but I know. But I mean, anything else? Any other subjects not related to this that we can work through while we wait for the last couple of minutes for it to catch up?
I mean, there was our discussion yesterday.
Right.
About penetrating and flanking actions.
Right. We're going to hold off on that.
Probably going to want to do that one later.
Yeah, that's something because we're still working on. So what we're talking about there is we have a conceptualization that we're working on for approaching the fight that ties to military strategies and things like counterattacks versus penetration versus flanking with a bunch of various analogies. So that's in the future, guys. It's kind of a completely different way to look at the Leger, the Blows, and the various things that we want to do and how we want to do them, but it is not yet ready to roll out to the general public. So just the ongoing thoughts that we have. And I'm going to disconnect now because my daughter is playing with the cables. That's probably going to get us disconnected anyway. So guys, I will see you next week. All right. And Kara, what you doing, baby? If you could